Hi, and welcome to this Amish video. So today I'm going to break down the video that I released last week and see if we can break the realism in cycles. Okay, and if you don't know what I'm talking about, here is the full 30-second video from last week. Okay, so here is the scene that we're going to be talking about today, and it's a very simple setup. It's literally just a few items. One item is floating because it's next to the camera. We're not going to see that it's not connected to the floor anyway, and we just have a very basic room. But what I do have turned on is backface culling, so that you can always see inside your rooms, which is very helpful for ArcViz especially. So I just had this set up, and I got all the items, of course, from imesh.com, and they basically were just ready to go from the start. Now, the idea of this video was to be very much in time with the music. So what I'm going to talk about is the music setup, and then how I set up all the cameras to switch on a certain beat. And then I'm going to talk about the material setup that I got from the wall, which looks very crazy, but it's actually very simple. And then I'm going to talk about the lighting setup, which I think probably most people are most interested about. Okay, so what I'm going to talk about first is the music. So here is a speaker. Now, I don't know if people know this. They probably looked at it, but they never kind of thought anything of it. But if you click on speaker, you'll add a new speaker to the scene. And these are the settings that I've got here, and I just loaded in the track which I like, and that was from Epidemic Sounds. And with these settings, it meant that anywhere the camera is, the music's always going to be the same volume, because I found that if I was further away from the speaker, the music volume was dropping, which was very annoying because I literally just wanted it as a reference. Now, what you can hear now is that if I scrub through the timeline, you'll hear the music. Now, that is very important, especially when I have so many things that need to happen on a specific beat, that I've gone over to here to playback, and I've enabled scrubbing. I've also enabled frame dropping, because if your viewport starts getting very sluggish and it's stopping starting, it can be very hard to follow the beat of the music. And I found myself, because the wall changed every 4 beats, I really needed to follow the music, and I was hitting the table and I was stopping the timeline just on the right beat so that I can then add the next keyframe. So with frame dropping and scrubbing, if I then go to the camera view and press play, we can then see that the music is then playing, and we can see it how it should be in final. And that's basically it for the music setup. So I'm going to go over to the camera setup now. And as you can see here, I have some markers. So every time I go to a next marker, actually, I'm just going to turn off scrubbing. Every time we go to a next camera, it switches automatically. And this is super powerful, and it means that you can follow the whole video through without having to bake everything down and do a test render or whatever. So what I've done here, to add a marker, I've literally just, if I go add a camera, let's just move this over here, and then just go over here and do marker, add a marker, and then bind camera to marker. So now if we scrub through, we can see that it's switching. So if I go like this, we can see it goes to this camera and then back to this one. So it's very simple, just add a marker and then bind the camera that you have selected to that camera. But I'm just going to delete that one now. Okay, so that's basically the setup. For the actual camera movements, it's very important. I see this all the time, and I mention this every single time I talk about animations. Try to make every single camera go as smooth as possible. You don't want any ease in and ease out. You want the same speed constantly. So if you watch this now, every camera is moving basically at the same speed, and it's not stopping and starting, slowing down or anything. It's just the exact same speed the whole entire time. Now what this does, it's not so disjointing and it's not so, is that the right word? Disjointing? When the camera speeds up and slows down between each frame, you kind of feel yourself going backwards and forwards, and it's very disorientating. Is that the right word? That's why I do 3D. I'm not very good with words. So that's very important. And to do that is very easy. So let me just turn off this again and just add a camera. So let's add a camera here. And I'm going to add a keyframe. So press I, location. And then at this frame, move it over. And then I, location. So now we can see this one moves over. Okay, so if we look at the actual keyframes that Blender has set up that we've just created, it's automatically done an ease in and ease out keyframe curve. So what that means is it will speed up and then towards the end it will slow down again, rather than being a constant speed. Now you can turn this off by going to Edit Preferences and going to F Curves and setting by default to linear, and then that won't happen. But I generally have that set to Bezier anyway, because if you're doing other kinds of animation, that one's probably going to be the most common type. But if you do a lot of camera work and you want to have a constant motion the whole time, I'd set that to linear. Now to turn these into linear, just select the frames you want, go to Key, Interpolation mode, and set to linear. So now if we press play, it's going to be a constant speed throughout the whole period. There we go, so now it stops. And that is basically what I did for every single camera. So I literally just have a very basic movement going from left to right, up or down, and that worked out quite nicely. Okay, so now what we're going to talk about is this crazy nose setup. Now, the main focus of this whole video was to showcase our new materials, which, if you're curious, okay, now we don't really do ads on our videos, but what we do obviously do is talk about what we actually do, and that is make models and textures. So this whole month we released a whole new bundle pack which has all these models in it. I think the total size is like 9 gigabytes, and you get 27 8K textures, and every single one is very high quality. So if you're curious, check that out. But we also have a bunch of freebies. So if you go over to this section, click on free at the bottom, you can then download all of this stuff completely for free. So check that out. And now let's go back to the video. Okay, so what I've done is that I've imported every single wall material that we have into the scene. And they are all represented here in these node groups. So in this node group, that's one material. And this refers to stone brick 2. So I've numbered that 2. The same one here, this one's number 3. So I've numbered that as 3, all the way down. So we have 27 materials in. What I've done to switch between each material is I've basically created a switch. And I'm going to show you how that works now. So if I make just a basic cube, and then let's add a new material. And we can say that this is material 1, and then this is material 2. So if I go, let's just zoom in here so we can see some frames. Right, and what I'm going to do is add a mix RGB, put that in here, or a mix shader actually. Mix shader, let's drop this one in here like this, and this one like this. We can set this material to red. So if we go to material preview, we can see that this is white and now this is red. So we need this to be automated. So what we're going to do is we're going to go down here and press I. So there's a 0, and then we're going to go to the next frame and press 1 and press I. So now if we go back and forth, we can see that it automatically switches. And then we can do the exact same again. So if we go down here, let's add another material. Let's make this one green and plug that in there and put these like this. So now what I'm going to do here is set this to 0, and we can see that this turns to 1 here. So at this frame, I want this one to be 1. And press I, and then at the previous frame, let's set this to 0 when the other one switches. So now we can see if we go like this, we go red, green. And that's basically all it is. So it's literally just going from one to the next, to the next, to the next, to the next. And we can do the same again. Let's just add a blue one. And let's click on this one so we can see the frames. So at frame 70, we want this to be at 0, so press I, and then at the next frame, we want this one to be 1. So if we select all of these, we can see all of the keyframes here. So it goes like this. And that's what I did for this material. So if I go back to here, oh no, please stop. If I click on this wall, it's literally just going from one to the next to the next. Now, as these walls also have displacement, I also needed to mix in the displacement output as well. So for every material that I want it to switch to, I've got two mixes. So I've got mix shader and normal mix nodes. We've got the displacement output for one and the displacement output from the other, and then going all the way down, and we're doing the same for the main shader as well. So for every single one, if we go to the start, we can see that they switch together. So if we can follow this, switches, 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 and it does that all the way down. So if I go like this, we should be able to see them all switching as they go down this path. Now, that's basically it for the shaders. So if I can do a render preview and show you how that looks. So if I go like this, okay, so we have one material, and then simply if I go over here like this, it will switch to the next material. I'm not sure why my GPU is going so slow today, but there we go. We can kind of see how it's literally just changed. Anyway, that's it for the basic materials. Now, the next thing was to try to make sure that it landed on the beat. And that was very, very important. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the playback and turn on scrubbing. And now we can press play. And it was always on that beat that I wanted it to change to. So I would just get into the rhythm. So it was roughly around here. So now we can do some scrubbing. And that is where I want the keyframe to be. And is that where I put it? I didn't put it there. So that one's a little bit off, but you kind of get the idea. So in general, this should be over here like this. So it's a little bit difficult to hear. Now, does anyone know if it's possible to put the waveform in the actual timeline? Because that would have saved so much problems. But in general, the way that I did it was just and press it like that. So if I actually select all of these nodes, we can kind of see that they should all follow roughly the beat. Okay, so that's basically it for the material setup. There's nothing too complicated there. I guess it looks complicated, but it's actually just switch, 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 switch all the way through to the music. Okay, so what I'm going to talk about now, and probably the thing that you're here for, and that is the lighting. Now, so when I say breaking realism with cycles, I mean that people get too hung up on thinking that the only way you can get realistic renders is with HDRIs or sky textures, especially for ArcViz, when that's just not true. So, well, that was a strange laugh. So what I've done is I've used just area lights, because what I tried to emulate was a lighting studio setup. And in lighting studios, they don't use any natural lighting because that's unpredictable. They can't guarantee what the day is going to be. So they have area lights essentially throughout the studio that cast light very specific ways onto very specific items in whatever color they want. So it's very controlled. And your eye is very trained on what a brochure looks like. These brochure photography studio setup lighting you see on all the advertisements day in, day out. So your eye is very trained on that and will look at that and think, yeah, that looks realistic because I've seen that a million times in the past. So what I've done here is I've just made a couple of area lights. That one is literally just a copy of this one, just to light this particular area. And then I've also got a little point light on this lamp here. That actually came with the lamp when I appended it in, and it just cast a nice little glow over the table. Actually, I'll just show you what that looks like. Now, the key benefit with area lights is that they're so fast. HDRIs, if you imagine, so this is actually what that one looks like. So it's not casting too much light, but it's a nice bit of a glow. Now, if you imagine you have a HDRI and that's outside the room, to light up the inside of the room, the light needs to come from all angles, bounce around here to eventually make it this direction. And the same for things lighting over here. You have to set up lighting portals to tell the light where to go, and that can be quite slow. Whereas area lights, you're telling it, I want the light to be here. There's no extra calculations or extra bounces that need to be done, so they generally clean up very fast, which is one of the key benefits of area lights. So if I show you what the area lights do, so let's turn on this one here. This is going to be the main light. And how natural does this look? It's literally just an area light, but what I've done is I've gone over to the spread and set it to 58. So if I put it to 180, that's a very, very wide angle light. Let's see if we can actually view it. Whereas if I put this back to 58, it's much more angled, as if the light is coming through a room. It's already done all the bounces, and this is the focus point of the light. And you're getting a nice sharp shadow. So that's also something that I find with area lights. The lighting is very sharp and just clean. I think that if you have not used them so much, you should try to use them on your next scene and just see what you can get. The next area light is just for this specific area here, which is for this camera, because I wanted to highlight this particular wall as I go down the scene. And to be honest, that's probably it for the lighting. I didn't really do anything else. I just have a couple of area lights, some nice materials, and obviously some really nice models. And that created this scene, and I think that it's one of my favorite scenes that I've created, especially against the music. And I mean, we spent so long on these walls, so it was really nice to showcase them. Okay, so I just realized I just got to the end of the video and I didn't say anything about the render settings. So as I said, I just have 2 area lights essentially filling the whole scene. And because area lights are so fast, I was able to do 350 samples, which look great, in about 1 minute and 59 seconds, or about 2 minutes per frame on an RTX 3070, which to me is incredible. That's 2 full minutes to have a really nice clean render. By the time it gets to 350 samples, it's almost cleaned up. And then in the compositor, I just add quite a simple denoise node. So I have not enabled denoising here, but instead I've just enabled it here, which gave me a very, very nice result. And especially for an animation at 750 frames at 2 minutes per frame is about 25 hours of render time. So I can have a full animation by just leaving my computer to run for 1 day, and then that's finished, which to me is incredible. So 350 samples, 2 minutes per frame was great. The next thing that I enabled is I just turned this on. This is use animated seed. Usually when you're rendering, Blender will create a noise pattern which will eventually clean up. Now, if you were to have every single frame running and every single frame was to have the exact same seed noise pattern, that noise pattern is going to stick to every single frame, and you'll see it kind of going across the scene. Now, if you turn this button on, you're going to get a new noise pattern for every single frame, which means that it's going to be a much more natural looking result, and you don't have this weird kind of pattern that sticks to the scene, which to me just looks odd. Now, when I get down, now let's go down to the light paths, and I simply have this setting here. I do have transparent turned up to about 32, which is for the pampas grass because there's so many overlapping planes. Now, 350 samples, that looked great for generally the whole scene, but for the pampas it really was struggling, and you get some areas which are flickering, which is not ideal. So for certain areas, maybe increasing that would be ideal, but in general, this kind of looked fine for what I wanted it to be for. Now for clamping, I've just turned these off, and that basically means that, you know, if there are any fireflies, then the fireflies are going to be very obvious. But because my lighting is very clean, simply 2 area lights and 1 point light, I didn't really have a problem with noise or fireflies in general, so I left that turned off, which is a more realistic result anyway. And then I have my subdivision level, the dicing rate for the displacement. I've set that to 1 and just for viewport 4. And we can see here the final thing that I have turned on is I have simplify set to a 4K resolution for the textures, which just help with the render time, because I think they're 8K textures that I was using. And to be honest, I think that's it. Nothing too crazy. Yeah, I think I'll leave that here and jump back to me saying thank you for watching the video, I guess. Okay, so that's probably it for the video. I think the key takeaways is very solid and linear camera movements, along with just don't go too crazy with your lighting. Try some very simple methods like area lights, or at least use area lights to highlight certain areas of your scene, and don't just rely on HDRIs. As well as try adding music into your scene and try to make the music go in time with the video, because in all these things together can make some very interesting videos. So I hope that you like this video. If I've done any other videos that you want to have more of a breakdown on, then please do let me know. But yeah, thank you very much for watching, and check out imesh.com. But at the very least, if you can press that subscribe button, then that would be super lovely. All right, bye.